Once, in a small village, there lived an old and wise man. People from far and wide came to him seeking advice for their problems. Every day, villagers would gather around him, complaining about the same troubles again and again. One day, the wise man decided to teach them a lesson. He told a joke, and everyone laughed. After a few minutes, he repeated the same joke, but fewer people laughed. He repeated it again and again, until no one laughed anymore. Smiling, the wise man said, "You can't laugh at the same joke over and over. So why do you cry over the same problem again and again?" The villagers realized the wisdom in his words and learned to stop dwelling on their problems. After the villagers understood the lesson, they began to reflect on their worries. However, some still found it difficult to change their ways. One day, a young man approached the wise man and said, "Master, I understand that worrying won't solve my problems, but what should I do when I face difficulties?" The wise man smiled and handed him a glass of water. "Hold this glass in your hand," he said. The young man held it without any effort. After a few minutes, the wise man asked, "How do you feel?" The young man replied, "It's fine. I don't feel any weight." The wise man nodded and said, "Now, keep holding it for an hour." As time passed, the young man's hand started shaking, and the glass felt heavier. His arm ached, and he begged, "Master, I cannot hold it any longer." The wise man took the glass and placed it on the table. "You see," he explained, "the problem is not the glass itself, but how long you hold on to it. The longer you hold on to your worries, the heavier they become. But if you put them down and rest, you will regain the strength to face them again." The young man bowed with gratitude, realizing that sometimes the best way to deal with a problem is to let go, take a break, and return with a fresh mind. Days passed, and the villagers began to practice the lessons they learned. They tried not to dwell on their worries and took breaks when problems seemed overwhelming. However, one day, a wealthy merchant came to the wise man looking troubled. "Master," the merchant said, "I have everything: wealth, a big house, and many servants. Yet I am not happy. I constantly worry about losing what I have. How can I find peace?" The wise man smiled and took the merchant to a nearby river. He handed him a handful of salt and asked him to dissolve it in a small cup of water. The merchant took a sip and immediately spat it out. "It's too salty," he exclaimed. Then the wise man took another handful of salt and threw it into the river. "Now, drink from the river," he said. The merchant did so and found the water fresh and pure. "Did you taste the salt?" the wise man asked. "No," the merchant replied. The wise man then explained, "The salt represents your worries, and the water represents your mind. If your mind is small, even a little worry will make it bitter. But if you expand your perspective and embrace life like a vast river, your worries will become insignificant." The merchant bowed in gratitude, understanding that instead of obsessing over his fears, he needed to open his heart to the bigger picture of life. One evening, a young warrior came to the wise man, frustration clear on his face. He bowed respectfully and said, "Master, I am strong. I have trained for years, yet I always doubt myself. I fear failure and judgment from others. How do I overcome this fear?" The wise man listened patiently, then led the warrior to a bamboo grove. He pointed at the tall, slender bamboo trees swaying in the wind and asked, Do you see how the bamboo bends but never breaks? The warrior nodded. The wise man continued, Now look at that oak tree. The warrior turned to see a massive oak standing tall and firm. Which one do you think is stronger? The wise man asked. The warrior thought for a moment and said, The oak, of course. It stands tall and unshaken. The wise man smiled. You may think so, but in a great storm the oak will resist the wind, and eventually it may crack or fall. But the bamboo, though it bends, survives. Strength is not about resisting life's challenges. It is about adapting, learning, and growing through them. The warrior's eyes widened in realization. So, you mean that true strength is in flexibility, not just power? The wise man nodded. When you stop fearing failure and instead learn from it, you become like the bamboo, able to withstand any storm life throws your way. The warrior bowed deeply, understanding that self-doubt was just another challenge to be faced, not feared. One morning, an impatient young man approached the wise man and said, Master, I have been working hard, but success is slow. I feel frustrated. Why does life not reward my efforts immediately? The wise man smiled and led the young man to his garden. He pointed at two plants. One was a small bamboo shoot, barely above the ground, and the other was a tiny fern. I planted both these seeds at the same time, the wise man explained. The fern sprouted quickly and grew into a beautiful plant within weeks. But the bamboo, it remained beneath the soil for years. It seemed as if nothing was happening. The young man frowned. So the bamboo was a failure? The wise man shook his head. No. For 5 years, the bamboo was growing its roots deep into the earth. And then suddenly, in its 6th year, it shot up, growing taller than all the other plants in just a few weeks. The young man's eyes widened in understanding. Success is like the bamboo, the wise man continued. You may not see immediate results, but that doesn't mean progress isn't happening. Your efforts are strengthening your foundation. When the time is right, you will rise higher than you ever imagined. The young man smiled, feeling encouraged. He now understood that patience and persistence were just as important as effort. One evening, a man burdened with sorrow came to the wise man. His eyes were filled with tears as he said, Master, I have lost someone dear to me. My heart is heavy with grief. How do I move on? The wise man listened with kindness and then said, Come with me. He led the grieving man to a quiet, starlit lake. They sat by the shore as the wise man picked up a small stone and threw it into the water. The stone created ripples that spread far across the surface. Do you see the ripples? The wise man asked. The man nodded. The wise man continued. When we lose someone, it is like this stone falling into the lake of our hearts. The pain creates ripples, spreading sorrow through our days, our thoughts, and our memories. The grieving man sighed. Then how do I stop the ripples? How do I end this pain? The wise man smiled gently. You cannot stop the ripples, just as you cannot stop your love and memories. But look closer at the lake. See how, even after the ripples, the water returns to stillness? The man looked and saw that after some time the lake had become calm again. The wise man placed a hand on his shoulder. Your heart is like this lake. Grief will create ripples, but in time your heart will find peace again. Do not fear the pain. It is a sign of love. Let the ripples come and go, and trust that your heart will heal. Tears rolled down the man's cheeks, but now they were mixed with gratitude. He bowed deeply, understanding that healing does not mean forgetting. It means allowing the heart to find stillness once more. Years passed, and the wise man grew old. His teachings had touched many lives, and the village flourished with wisdom, kindness, and understanding. But one day, a young boy approached him with a question that no one had ever asked before. "Master, you have helped so many people, but what about you? What is the greatest lesson you have learned in your life?" The wise man smiled, looking up at the sky. He took a deep breath, then said, "Come with me." He led the boy to a hilltop where they could see the entire village below. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the land. The wise man sat down and gestured for the boy to do the same. "Life is like this sunset," the wise man began. "No matter how long the day has been, no matter what storms have come, the sun always sets with grace. It does not fight against the night. It embraces it, knowing that a new dawn will come." The boy listened intently. The wise man continued, "In my life, I have learned that everything changes. Happiness, sorrow, success, failure, even life itself. People spend their days chasing things or running from fears, but in the end, all that truly matters is how much love and kindness we share." The boy thought for a moment and asked, "So what should we do?" The wise man smiled warmly. "Live with an open heart. Be kind, be patient, and never be afraid of change. Just like the sun sets today, it will rise again tomorrow. No matter what happens, life always gives us another chance." As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, the boy looked at the wise man with admiration. He now understood that wisdom was not about knowing everything. It was about embracing life with peace and understanding. The wise man closed his eyes, feeling the cool breeze on his face. He had shared his final lesson, and he knew his journey was complete. And so, as the village continued to grow with the seeds of wisdom he had planted, the wise man rested, knowing his teachings would live on in the hearts of those he had touched.